What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Juicy Jet Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Rooney, and we got a quick one today because we are at halftime of the Knicks game, and I wanted to jump on because there's been a good amount of news over the past couple days. So I wanted to get this out before we get to the second half of Game 1 against the Celtics. It's not looking good so far, but we'll talk about that during the gym break. Before I go forward, I just want to say and give a shout out to I went to a lovely wedding this weekend of David and Maria, now Siegel. They are longtime listeners of the Juicy Jet podcast, even though they're both diehard Patriot fans. So shout out to them on a great wedding. We'll have Dave come on the podcast as we get closer to the season to talk a little bit about Jets, Patriots, see where we rank and sit after training camp. So it should be fun. But shout out to those two for listening. I hope you enjoy. But we got a lot going on right now in Jets land. So I definitely want to walk through, obviously, a trivia question. Got to do it. Do our trivia question. We'll talk about a couple things in the news that we've seen from the Jets in the past 5, 6, 7 days. I also have one thing from just general NFL news, which I think is interesting because it relates to last week's podcast. Then we will do our quick gym break because there's been a lot happening too with our Mets, Jets, Islanders, which is very interesting, and Knicks. And then we'll go into, there's been this thing going around Jets Twitter about the Mount Rushmore of New York Jets. So we're going to list off what that Mount Rushmore looks like for me. So let's dive right in. Trivia question for today. This is kind of a tough one, so we'll see what people think. Who was the most recent Jets quarterback? So there's been 4 people who have done this, a combination of 5 times, to post a perfect passer rating of 158.3 in a game. So who was the most recent Jets quarterback to have a perfect passer rating of 158.3 in a game? So we'll see if you guys can get that one. That's a little bit of a toughie, so we'll see how it goes. But let's move on to the New York Jets and what's been going on. So obviously we're about a week removed from the NFL draft, and this happens with every fan base where I feel a little bit better about the draft every single time I relook at it and think about what happened. So you feel a little bit better about some of the players that we got. And, I'm listening to some podcasts like the Walter Football Guys, things like that. And they're really liking the Arian Smith pick. I'm still not in love with it, but I feel a little bit better. People are comforting me. John Gruden's a huge fan of Arian Smith because of his speed. So that's a really interesting one. We'll see how it plays out, but we're starting to feel good about it. And it seems like consensus is we got a B- to a B+ in terms of grades, but you never really know what your grade's going to be until you're like 3 years down the road and you see who's still on the team, who's performing well, all that good stuff. So the draft is definitely still in full swing here. Signing undrafted free agents is still happening. Signing regular free agents is still happening throughout the NFL. I think for me, my favorite pick, and I really didn't think this was going to be it because I didn't think we were going to take a corner, but Azareye'h Thomas out of Florida State, I think is still my favorite pick of the draft. He was our 3rd-round pick. I think long-term, him and Sauce Gardner across from each other, 2 big, lengthy corners. It just reminds me of Antonio Cromartie so much, and he went to Florida State as well. So I just think that's a really interesting one, and I'm excited to see how he does in training camp if he can get on the field this year. So that's still my number 1 favorite draft pick from last week. But I think one of the interesting things is we are in full football mode. In 3 days from now, the rookies report to their workouts, their mandatory workouts. So it's going to be cool to have all of them in the building. And, of course, there'll be tryout players, undrafted free agents that are working out with the team too. So we'll see if we actually sign anybody there. But, it's going to be cool to get everybody in a Jets uniform out there practicing. I mean, it's there's no pads or anything like that. It's just them running around in shorts and a T-shirt. But I think it's going to be fun. It just like gets you in the zone for summer and getting ready for training camp, which is probably going to be end of July. So I think that's really exciting. Another thing too is we've actually seen all the veterans out at workouts. So luckily we had everyone who is important and needs to be there has been there. You saw Justin Fields, you saw Sauce, you saw Garrett, Breece Hall's there. I think that's really great to see. We heard from Aaron Glenn that Jermaine Johnson's moving along nicely. So I think especially with Sauce, Garrett, and Jermaine, we officially picked up their 5th-year options. I think it's really important for them to be around the team as much as possible, show that they're a leader, and then probably get an extension done with at least Sauce and Garrett by the time the summer ends. That's kind of the prediction. I feel like in the next 2 months, things are really going to start to heat up with an extension hopefully in July. Because that's like when things are a little bit quieter. So I think July or August is probably when it gets done. So I think that's been really exciting. I'm glad that they're all there. Like, I was a little nervous that Garrett or Sauce wouldn't show up because they want a new contract, but it seems like they're team guys, team players, and it's fun watching Aaron Glenn, stand on the sideline with them. One other thing that's been really interesting is watching Justin Fields throw to both Garrett and to Jeremy Ruckert, so two of his former teammates at Ohio State. So that's been cool to see. Once again, shorts and a t-shirt, so nothing crazy, but it's nice to see the gang back together again. Finally, the last thing around the Jets is some sad news. Jordan Travis, who was our potentially third-string quarterback, we drafted him last year out of Florida State. He had a devastating ankle and leg injury when the Florida State was undefeated. They should have gone to the college football playoff. He gets hurt, and the committee left them out. That was back when there's only 4 teams in it instead of I think it's like 12 that we have now. So, we were hoping that he would just sit on the bench all year and not play at all, and he'd be ready to go this year. But it sounds like, well, there's 2 things coming out of it. Number one, it sounds like his rehab didn't go the way it's supposed to. And the doctors said, hey, you got to hang him up. This isn't going to work. You can't go out on the football field. You're just going to make it worse. So I think, so that was kind of interesting. The other thing, too, is a couple months ago, Jordan Travis and his agent ripped the Jets, saying that we pushed him too hard during rehab, which actually gave him a setback. For me, while that could be true, I do not give the Jets the benefit of the doubt ever. So it could be true, but I do think if this was as devastating as it sounds like it is, I don't think rehabbing hard was going to actually get him, was going to hurt him that much more where he couldn't play. It sounds like the injury was so bad in the first place that he was never getting back on the field anyway because he wasn't going to be fit to play. He wasn't going to survive out there. So what was a promising draft pick, and of course, sadly, is now a wasted draft pick for Joe Douglas from his final draft as the Jets GM. So it's sad, and now we're only left with, obviously we got Justin Fields, we got Tyrod Taylor, we got Adrian Martinez, who doesn't have an NFL arm, at least in my opinion. And then we've got Cook from Missouri, who we just signed as an undrafted free agent. And everyone's like, shoot, we should have just taken a quarterback in the draft. Well, having Cook on the team is like taking a quarterback in the draft. We would have taken him in the 7th round. Taking him as an undrafted free agent is the same exact thing. So we have someone. It's not like we needed to waste a pick on Quinn Ewers in the 7th round or something like that. So I think we're still in an okay spot. Like, no matter what, it's still all on Justin Fields, so it doesn't really matter who our 3rd and 4th quarterbacks are. So hopefully he can perform well, and if not, then you got the ammo to move up next year in the draft. So we'll see how it goes. Final thing I wanted to mention in the NFL, just news today. We talked about last week how the Baltimore Ravens were one of my favorite drafts, and they drafted a kicker late in the draft. Well, it turns out today they did finally cut Justin Tucker. They said it was a football decision. Well, when you have 16 allegations of you being inappropriate in a massage parlor, that probably weighs into the football decision just a little bit. So Justin Tucker's going to go down as one of the greatest kickers of all time. I think he's the NFL leader in accuracy as a kicker, but he didn't have a great year last year. And now with all these, 16, I don't know what you want to call them, inappropriate encounters on his record, it just didn't make sense for them to keep him. I'm curious if anyone signs him, or do they wait for the legal proceedings to play out, see how all of that goes. So very interesting. I'm glad that the Ravens finally made a move. And no, I do not expect the Jets to make a move for Justin Tucker because I think Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji want to stay as far out of the spotlight as humanly possible. And this is one way to do it, is avoid a legal battle right now. So that was the news in the NFL and with the New York Jets. So let's take a timeout here. Let's do a quick gym break. There's a lot going on. I mean, first, let's start with the Islanders. The Islanders are the one that's most recent, literally happened a couple hours ago. So the Islanders were like number 13 in the NHL lottery, where essentially they put a whole bunch of like lottery balls inside of one of those machines, and they pull out combinations, and whichever combination gets pulled out are the ones that get the better pick. And the worse you finish, the higher percent chance you have of getting the number one pick. So the Islanders only had a 3.5% chance of landing the number one pick in the draft, and somehow, by some miracle, we have been blessed with the number one pick in the NHL draft. I believe it's in end of June, which is awesome. I mean, there's two really great center prospects that, the Islanders need offense. We need people who can score. So I think they're going to have their pick of the litter. We don't actually have a GM yet, so I don't know who's going to be making the pick, but hopefully it's an easy pick because you got the number one pick in the draft. You can pick literally whoever you want. So it sounds like we're going to have some good young talent. One of the prospects is actually from Hop Hog, grew up a New York Islanders fan. So hopefully he's our guy. That would be pretty sweet. Even though he went to Boston College, I'm a Northeastern guy, so screw Boston College. But we'll see. I mean, hey, if he makes the Islanders better, I'll take it. So that's the Islanders. We'll see how that plays out as we get to the draft in June. But very exciting that we have the potential to get a good young prospect that could play some offense. So we'll see how that all plays out. Let's talk about the Mets. The Mets, we hit a little bit of a slump here. Not really a slump. It's more of like we're playing 500 baseball, maybe a little under 500 baseball, where, we've lost 2 series in a row to the Cardinals and to the Diamondbacks. I think we're actually flying out to Arizona tonight and playing there. And then the injury bug's starting to get to us. Winker's going to be out 8 weeks. Minter's gone for the season. So that's trouble. I feel like the offense is close to waking up, but then we have runners in scoring position and can't bring anybody home. Soto got robbed of a home run last night. Hit another one to the warning track. I feel like we're close, but with all this and all this negativity, we still have the best record in baseball. So it's not like we're all of a sudden tanking here. Everything's still okay. It's how do you make sure you start winning some of these series again? So that's the Mets. We'll see how it goes. Long season ahead. And then the Knicks. So first of all, they're playing against the Pistons in the first round. This is game 6 in Detroit. I thought it was over. And we were winning the series still, but I thought it was over for sure. And then Jalen Brunson has his legendary moment where he does like a quick cut, like that Michael Jordan-esque cut, and then has a wide open 3, pops it in to take the lead, and we never relinquish that lead. But now we're up against the juggernaut Celtics, and we haven't beat them all year. We don't beat teams that we're not supposed to beat. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, we're down 16 at half already in game 1. Can't hit free throws. That's been a huge problem. So we'll see. I mean, in Boston, it's a tough place to play, defending champs. We'll see how it goes. But I am not 100% confident in this Knicks team or Tom Thibodeau right now. So we'll see how it goes. And then, so that is I'm trying to think if there's any other sports that I missed, anything else that's going on. I think that's it for my gym break. Let's get back into the Jets. And actually, before we go deep into the Jets' Mount Rushmore, I want to talk about one more thing because this was actually very exciting. The NFL draft was announced for 2027 in its location. And this is kind of cool for me because I had insider information about a week and a half ago. And I wasn't allowed to say anything. And I felt like I finally got that I'm a juicy source now. I've got my sources for Juicy Jet News. And so I knew that the NFL draft was going to be held in Washington. Kind of cool, like DC on the mall. It's going to be really interesting to see how they set it up. I've looked at some of like the renderings of what it's going to look like. And it looks pretty sweet. I mean, I need to do everything humanly possible to get inside of the theater once again, but it looks cool. And DC is a cool city. I haven't been there in a long time, so I'd love to go back to DC and hang out there for a bit. I think the one thing that's frustrating me about the NFL draft now is they keep picking cold weather, like not even cold weather, like it's risky in April. I think that's the thing, where it's rainy, could be cold or chilly or something like that. Let's go to a warm weather city and enjoy the draft. Let's go south. So who knows? One day. But Washington's getting a lot of stuff done. They got the draft locked in for 2027. They're building a new stadium. So everything's coming up. And they got a great young quarterback and a great team. So everything's coming up Washington right now. But all right, that is the NFL draft news. What I want to do now is really quickly go through my Mount Rushmore of New York Jets. Now, there's two ways to do this. And this is in response to everybody doing this all over Jets Twitter, things like that. So there's two ways you go about it. Number one is who are the best players in Jets history? So that's looking all the way back to 1960 to say who are the 4 players that were either the most impactful or best players for the New York Jets. So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is who is your personal Mount Rushmore? Who are the 4 players that made you a diehard Jets fan or that you loved during your time watching the team or maybe going to games or whatever it might be? So I'm going to do both. Let's start really quickly with the 4 best players or most impactful players in New York Jets history. You can see a bunch of them behind me if you're on YouTube. I think no matter what, you got to put Joe Namath on there. Obviously, one of the best players in NFL history and won us our only Super Bowl. He's also probably the one player who most significantly changed the NFL because obviously we're in the AFL, guarantees the win. He has all the media notoriety. He could have gone to the NFL, but instead he decided to get drafted in the AFL, where the Jets took him, number 1 overall. First quarterback to throw for 4,000 yards. I mean, just he changed the game. So Joe Namath has to be on there as number 1 on the Mount Rushmore. Now this is where it gets tricky. There are a couple options. You can go Curtis Martin. You can go Darrelle Revis. You can go Don Maynard. You can go Joe Klecko. You can go Mark Gastineau. You can go Winston Hill. Those of you who don't know who Winston Hill is, he was the left tackle for Joe Namath during the Super Bowl years. You can even go Larry Grantham, who was a linebacker during the Super Bowl years. For me, it's a no-brainer. Curtis Martin's number 2 for me. I think not only was he one of the greatest running backs of all time, greatest Jets of all time, he helped foster in that age of winning that we had from the late 90s into the early and mid-2000s. And then he's also just an absolutely incredible person and ambassador for the New York Jets. So I think you go Joe Namath, Curtis Martin. Then for me, number 3 is Darrelle Revis. He is probably the best player we've ever had. The seasons from 2008 probably to 2012, I don't think there was a corner that has ever played that well in NFL history as just a pure cover corner. So Darrelle Revis, I think, is the best Jets player of all time. So that's 3. Now here comes the big debate. I don't think Gastineau gets in here. I think Winston Hill, while he was a great player and a Hall of Famer, didn't do he's a left tackle, so it's really hard to break through as a left tackle on this list. So I'm stuck between Don Maynard and Joe Klecko. Don Maynard, Hall of Fame wide receiver, one of the best of all time. Joe Klecko just recently goes into the Hall of Fame. He played 3 different positions. He got to the Pro Bowl at 3 different positions on the defensive line. Was part of the NFL or the New York Stock Exchange. So another great option. I think I'm going to go Don Maynard, just because, once again, we only have 1 Super Bowl, and we needed players who were a part of it. We didn't win a lot. The Stock Exchange got close, but we didn't make it to the Super Bowl. So I think I go Don Maynard. There is a very valid argument for Joe Klecko in this Mount Rushmore conversation. So, recapping my 4, Joe Namath, Curtis Martin, Darrelle Revis, Don Maynard, the 4 Mount Rushmore New York Jets. And wow, that's a huge gap. You probably could include Joe Klecko to cover every generation. But yeah, from end of the 1960s to Curtis Martin was, 1998? It's a pretty big gap in years without any really good players. So that's my best Jets players should be Mount Rushmore. Now, if you go into personal Mount Rushmore, this is where it gets interesting because there's probably players that I'm going to say that you've never even heard of before. So for me, no doubter, number 1 on my Mount Rushmore, Darrelle Revis, my favorite player of all time. Absolutely awesome player, awesome Jet. I slightly hate the fact that he was a pain in the butt towards the end of his career with us, where he goes to the Patriots, win a Super Bowl, goes to the Buccaneers, he goes to the Chiefs. He didn't play that well towards the end with us. But man, those years when we were good and we were winning, he was unbelievable. Number 2, I go Curtis Martin. Curtis Martin was probably my favorite player growing up as a little kid. I just great running backs were cool when you're young and a kid. They get you they score touchdowns, they get you fantasy points, all that stuff. I loved them. The year 2004 when he won the rushing title at the age of like 31 or 32, he won it by 1 yard over Sean Alexander. That was an awesome season. I couldn't believe it. And then his knees just broke down after that. But he had 10 straight years of 1,000 yards rushing. He's an incredible Jet. Unfortunately, I've just picked two Jets who also play for the Patriots. So that's, now that I'm thinking about it, that really hurts me. Number 3, this is a real wild card that people probably don't know, but Kerry Rhodes, one of my favorite Jets of all time, played safety for us during the Eric Mangini and Rex Ryan years. He was a kind of a ball hawk. He would pick the ball up. Then actually, when he went to go play for the Cardinals after he left the Jets, he plays us at, I think we were in MetLife at the time, and he has 2 picks in the game against us. So I'm like, well, there's my guy. So if you actually have heard or seen my TikTok name, my screen name when I was a kid, like all that stuff, it's got the 25 in it. That is for Kerry Rhodes. He was one of my favorite players of all time. Probably shocking to most people. Then for me, there are a couple other folks that stand out. I loved Victor Green growing up. He was one of my favorite players, played safety during the Parcells years. You could put Wayne Corbett on there, obviously. Jets slot wide receiver legend. You could put Mangold and Ferguson, stalwarts of the offensive line. I loved Braylon Edwards. I thought he was a really fun Jet to watch. Probably didn't play long enough. Same thing with Thomas Jones. Loved him as well. Trying to think who else. David Harris, but he wasn't like that flashy. Trying to think who else. Keyshawn, but he was like, I was a little bit younger with Keyshawn, but I remember really liking him. Santana Moss, Lavernius Coles, loved those guys. John Abraham, I really loved him, but once again, didn't last long enough. So I think my final one, this is probably also controversial because he didn't play. He did not actually play for the Jets. My 4th on my personal Mount Rushmore is probably Rex Ryan. The reason it's Rex Ryan is because he was a Jet. Like the way he talked about what it was like to be a part of this team, I thought was so awesome. It felt like he was one of us. And he still does sound like that. In the media, he still speaks as a Jets fan. And I loved his story about how his dad was on the coaching staff when we won the Super Bowl. And he brought the only winning years we've ever had. The ground and pound with Mark Sanchez and the rest of that team playing stalwart defense. It was awesome. It was such a fun time. And that's what really got me into like going to all the away games, going to all the drafts, doing all that stuff. And we've sucked ever since. So while Rex Ryan was not the greatest coach of all time, he had tons of flaws. You saw once the talent started to fade from the Eric Mangini talent to what Rex Ryan was choosing in terms of players, he lost it for sure. But those years were the best years I had as a Jets fan. I miss it. I'm really mad we never got a home playoff game during that time because it would have been bananas. So I think that's what I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with Darrelle Revis, Curtis Martin, Kerry Rhodes, and Rex Ryan. It's actually funny. Rex Ryan called Kerry Rhodes a diva, and that's what got him out. And he traded him to the Cardinals. So my own Mount Rushmore is fighting. But yeah, I think that's it. Victor Green had a really good case. I really loved him when I was growing up. I think Wayne Corbett had a really good case. Linemen are really tough. Like, I don't know if I could have picked Brick or Mangold because if a lineman is playing well, you don't talk about them because you don't hear their name the entire game. I think Sauce has the potential, both Sauce and Garrett have the potential to be in my Mount Rushmore, but they need more time and we have to win. Like that's the thing. Like I can't pick any of these players from the last 14 years of this playoff drought because they've been horrible. So, all right, that is it. I've gone longer than I was supposed to. Next game is back on. Hold on, let me check really quick. Oh boy, it's 81-66. That's not good. But I'm going to get back to it. Before I do, let's answer this trivia question. Who was the most recent Jets quarterback we've done it 5 times, to post a perfect passer rating of 158.3 in a game? I will give you a hint. It was in the year 2014. I will give you an additional hint if you haven't figured it out yet. This player is still active in the league. He is still a quarterback in the league today. I'll give you another hint. He plays under Pete Carroll, former Jets head coach. Yes, it is our former second-round pick, Geno Smith. Geno Smith is the last one to have a perfect passer rating of 158.3 in 2014. And if you remember, it was against the Dolphins in Miami. He is just slinging it. I remember he had this perfect dime to Eric Decker. Oh, he was another. Well, actually, I love Brandon Marshall too. I forgot about him for the Mount Rushmore. He was just playing out of his mind. I couldn't believe it. He also had a great game against Atlanta. I think it was earlier that year or the year before. So Geno Smith had moments with us that were really great, but then ACL, he gets punched in the face by a teammate. He was just immature, I think, for New York at the time. And looking back, sure, could we have kept him around? I mean, once you get punched in the face by a teammate, it's kind of hard to do that. And Ryan Fitzpatrick played amazing. But yeah, it's great to see that he's still in the NFL. He's still doing his thing. I don't know if he'll ever get over the hump of winning. He needs a really good defense. Needs a really strong run game. But with Pete Carroll, you got a chance. So we'll see how he does the rest of his career. All right, everybody. That is all I've got for today. Don't forget, follow me on TikTok, JuicyJet25. Follow me on Twitter, KevinRooney25 for Kerry Rhodes. Don't forget it. And yeah, and then hopefully we have some guests coming on over the next couple of weeks because it's going to be the downtime in the NFL season coming up soon once we get past these little mini camps that we have going on. So I'm going to try to get some guests on, talk about the team, talk about some of the hires we made, free agency, all of that good stuff, and go from there. So thank you all for listening. Hope you have a good rest of the week, and I will talk to you later. See ya.